Welcome to this edition of Sound Off Extra Hell in a Cell 2014 review here on the official YouTube channel for the Solomonster Sounds Off Wrestling Podcast, which you can listen to each and every Sunday on the Solomonster.com, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, and iTunes. I am the Solomonster. Last night was WWE's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view from Dallas, Texas. Went 7-1. In my predictions, as I mentioned them on Sound Off episode 351. The only one that screwed me over was the main event, which we will talk about in a little bit. I thought very good show overall. Really not a bad match on the entire card. I mean, some matches were obviously better than others. I thought the two main events delivered, even with the finish of the Ambrose-Rollins match being what it was, and that seems to have stirred up a lot of controversy amongst people online. I was fine with it. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit later on. They cut to Renee Young, Booker T, Alex Riley, and Paul Heyman quite a bit. They were the pre-show panel. They cut to them quite a bit during the show for analysis. And I really hope somebody drug-tested Booker T after the show was over, because he was definitely on something during the show. I don't know what, but it must be some good shit. So the show opened with Dolph Ziggler and Cesaro, 2 out of 3 falls for the Intercontinental Championship. Real good match. Fell short of being a great match and stealing the show like I thought they would. And I thought they would open the show, but I also thought they would give them at least 15 minutes solid to go out there and just tear the house down. They really didn't do that. They didn't tear the house down. They didn't get the time to do that. Ziggler won the first fall in all of 3 minutes after a giant swing by Cesaro and a pin attempt. Ziggler rolled into a pin attempt of his own, took the fall. The story here was Ziggler working over Cesaro's arm that he had injured, missing an elbow off the ropes at one point. Ziggler had him in a guillotine, and Cesaro, even with Ziggler on him, still managed, because he's a freak of nature, this guy, to scale the ropes, and he reversed it. He turned it somehow into a gigantic superplex. The dude is a beast. It really is too bad we're not going to get to see that Beast vs. Beast match at the Royal Rumble that I pitched, because I think it would have been a lot of fun. I'm watching this show with two people, okay? Two people who are casual fans at best, husband and wife. And for all the talk that I still hear from some people about how bland Cesaro is and how devoid of any personality he is and how he'll never amount to anything because of that, these two people, who are not diehard wrestling fans, they don't know where Cesaro came from. They didn't follow him in ROH or anything like that. These two people reacted more to his power moves in this match than anything else on the entire card. Okay, that spot where he propelled Ziggler into the air for the uppercut was another one. I think that should have been another fall, but Dolph kicked out. Dolph kicked out of everything that Cesaro threw at him, and then he won the second fall with the zigzag. So Ziggler retains the title in 2 straight falls. That shocked the hell out of me. I mean, I was stunned when I saw that. Not that Dolph won because he was my pick. I just figured after 4 straight losses on television, the guy needed a strong win. He got one here. I didn't think it would be that strong, but he badly needed this win. I just didn't see him going 2 straight falls to do it. But again, really good match. I'd have to say, though, a level below what I expected it to be. Nikki Bella and Brie Bella, with the loser becoming the winner's bitch for the next 30 days. I have to give both women credit. This was a lot better than I expected it to be. I still do not care for this feud. I think it's one of the lowlights of 2014. But this was a good match. Surprisingly so. Diva Stopwatch had this at 6 minutes, 22 seconds. They actually gave both women's matches on the show a good amount of time, which was nice to see. Brie hit a tope on Nikki at one point. Looked like she almost killed herself. I've been railing about this on my podcast for a while now. We see these dives in every single WWE match, and it's overkill. I mean, we see it in TNA too, but it's absolutely overkill. The Usos do it in all of their matches, and it's almost like their thing. It's not like they started the trend, but I'm okay with them doing kind of the double dives. That's their thing, but we see the Usos do it. We see Luke Harper do it, which is impressive because he's a big dude, but probably shouldn't be doing topes. We see Dean Ambrose do it, Seth Rollins. We used to see CM Punk do it, Daniel Bryan. Now the women are doing it. I wish they would cool it on the dives. It's ridiculous at this point. It doesn't mean anything, and one of these days somebody's going to get killed. Brie nailed a sweet missile drop kick for another near fall in the match. Nikki hit her with the rack attack, which is her finishing move, but Brie kicked out. And then about a minute later, she had punched Brie in the face, just cold cocked her right in the face. and Nikki hit a second rack attack and got the clean pin. So Brie is now her sister's servant for the next month. They already started with the skits later on in the show with Brie getting Nikki a smoothie and then having it dumped on her own head. This is Cena and the Nexus all over again. Gold and Stardust against the Usos tag team title match. Back-to-back sibling matches. I noted that on Twitter. I said, I wonder if that's ever happened before. I can't think of it ever happening in WWE before. I'm talking real siblings, by the way, not the Smoking Guns or Edge and Christian or any of that nonsense. Dust Brothers retained. Real good match. Goldust hit his twisting RKO on Jay for the pin. I would expect nothing less from these two teams. Both teams are great, but if I never see them wrestle again, I would be perfectly fine with that. How many times can we see some combination of these two teams in the ring together? It's like, enough already. How many Usos, Dust Brothers matches and six-man tags on Raw and SmackDown can we possibly see? Get some new tag teams. Seriously. If TNA goes down the tubes, and I tell you what, every week that goes by that they don't announce something new about a TV deal, it looks more and more likely that their future is in question. If TNA was to go away, WWE would be crazy not to bring in the Hardys and the Dudleys. Although the Dudleys, I guess, now are gone from TNA, but bring them in anyway. The Hardys, the Dudleys, and even the Wolves. And I know they passed on the Wolves the first time. They would be nuts not to bring those teams in for depth reasons, if nothing else. At least it would give us some fresh matchups. And then if they ever bring up, let's say, Colin Cassidy and Enzo Amore and the Lucha Dragons from NXT, then we'll have a nice tag team division. Then we'll have a nice crop of tag teams with some fresh matches, and things will be all right. But right now, that division is just deader than dead. We had John Cena versus Randy Orton. Hell in a Cell with the winner earning a future title match against the Beast, Brock Lesnar. The winner is the real loser here because that means they have to wrestle Brock Lesnar. That's how I look at it. Robert on Twitter during the show noted that as the cell was being lowered, Michael Cole referred to it as malignant. This came right after a breast cancer survivor promo. Oops. That was pretty stupid. It would not be the last stupid thing the announcers would say on this show. I was happy they decided to put these guys on mid-show and give the main event to Rollins and Ambrose. It was the right move. Perception is everything, and putting those guys on last, on a WWE pay-per-view, that still does mean something. When you're the last match to go on, and you're ending the show, you're going off the air with your match, that still means something. It means you belong in the main event, and those guys definitely do belong in the main event, Rollins and Ambrose. I think they've proven that. Although it does look like Ambrose may be taking a break from the main event for a while, given the finish of his match. The one thing that really struck me above all else about the Orton-Cena match, and I said it a million times leading up to it, this match did not need to be inside Hell in a Cell. This match had no business being inside Hell in a Cell. This would have been just fine as a no-holds-barred match and save the Hell in a Cell stipulation for the main event. But it's October, and so that means we need to have a couple of Hell in a Cell matches. And I hate it. I absolutely hate that. And now that they've done away with the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, I hope Hell in a Cell is next on the hit list. There is no need for this to be a pay-per-view every single year. It just kills the match. So they basically had a hardcore match inside the cell. 25 minutes they gave these two. They gave Rollins and Ambrose 14 minutes, but I guess that's the trade-off for them getting to close the show. They had a good match. It was good. Cena and Orton had a good match. It wasn't great. It was not an all-time great Hell in a Cell match people are going to remember years from now. Not even close. It's not the storied rivalry either that Michael Cole was making it out to be. I mean, he's doing what he's told to do. I get that, but it just rings so hollow. And it as if he, as an announcer, as if they gave this poor guy any credibility anyway. He definitely didn't have any for all the, after all the talk about how this is such a great, legendary feud. Put it this way. Here's how I look at it. They tried to put it on the same level as Hogan vs. Piper, Brett vs. Shawn, Austin vs. Rock. It's not even in the same league as any of those feuds. Having a million matches does not automatically make it a legendary feud. Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho feuded for 6 months back in 2008. That was a legendary feud in WWE. Those guys had a feud that people are going to remember years from now. Those guys had a classic ladder match that people are going to remember years from now. The one where Jericho got his tooth knocked out. That was 6 months. These two have feuded for over 6 years. It's all about quality, not quantity. Okay, even today, I could go back and watch Raw segments from the Bret Hart-Shawn Michaels feud in 1997. Random Raw segments with the two of them jaw-jacking back and forth. And it still makes for great TV. I'll probably be going back and watching those segments, 5 or 10 years even from now. And so ask yourself this question. How many people 10 years from now are going to have enough interest to go back and watch Raw segments building up John Cena versus Randy Orton? Nobody. And that's the difference. So it makes me sick whenever they try to make this out to be more than it is. It is not a storied, legendary feud. It is a feud that has gone on for way too long. Orton nailed a fantastic RKO out of nowhere as Cena was coming off the ropes for one of his patented flying shoulder blocks. He caught him in midair and just dropped him. It was great. Cena kicked out. He also kicked out of a second RKO later on when Orton slipped out of an attitude adjustment. Orton kicked out of Cena's finish a couple of times. So it was one of those matches. Cena tried to kill Orton at one point. He launched the ring steps at him. So he had the ring steps in the ring. Orton was on the outside. He launched the steps at him, but Orton dodged it. Not the first time we've seen John Cena attempt to murder somebody by way of flying ring steps. He did the same thing to Bray Wyatt. So, some role model this guy is. That's like Hogan back in the day. Hogan, was the great American babyface, right? The real American. And all Hogan would do, he would rake people's backs. He would, scratch them. He would use eye gouges like they were going out of style. These baby faces are like heels at heart. Finish came when Orton was setting up for an RKO off the ropes, through a table that was set up in the ring, but Cena reversed it into an AA through the table and got the pin. So it will be John Cena versus Brock Lesnar, Part 4. I'm not counting their match from 2003. Cena versus Lesnar 4, probably at the Royal Rumble. And, it's too bad. Orton would have been a fresh opponent for Lesnar. It's a match we've never seen before. Orton's got some momentum right now, even though he's a heel. He can straddle that line. Plus, in a match with Brock, whether he turns, really turns between now and then or not, Orton's going to be cheered. It would have been unique. And I think Orton versus Lesnar with the idea that he could hit that RKO out of nowhere and take the title from him, it would have been intriguing. But they went with the status quo, which seems to be WWE's MO of late. They're afraid to take chances on anybody other than John Cena, and that's just how it's going to be until the guy's body starts to break down. But I think they've missed a real opportunity here. Sheamus and The Miz for the United States Championship. The revelation in this match, you don't need me to tell you that, but Damien Mizdow. You take Damien Mizdow out of this match, and it's a dead match, especially where it was positioned right after the first Hell in a Cell match. People really didn't care even now, but it was all about Mizdow, and Mizdow got chance. The Miz wasn't getting chance. Mizdow was. He was fantastic in this match. I had tears in my eyes. The people I was watching with were laughing their ass off. It was just fantastic, and Sheamus got the win. He retains the U.S. title. When the match was over, Miz was out from a brogue kick, and so, of course, Mizdow rolls into the ring and lays right next to him because he mimics everything that he does. Sheamus comes over, and he starts, he's grabbing the Miz and holding his arms up, and Mizdow is just replicating everything that Miz is doing. So this ends with Sheamus picking up the Miz and holding Miz's arms. He starts doing the YMCA dance, and he actually got the crowd to chant YMCA. They were singing it. It was actually quite fantastic to watch. And then he laid out Miz with another kick. So that was the match. I couldn't really tell you much else that happened because all my focus was on Mizdow outside the ring. And I made this comment on the last podcast I did, and I stand by it. I think from now on, they're better off keeping the camera on Mizdow and having the occasional cut-ins to Miz in the actual match. I love how Mizdow worked up more of a sweat than Miz did, and he wasn't even in the match. We had Big Show and Rusev. I was actually looking forward to this match because I found their first match on Raw a couple of weeks ago to be way better than it had any right to be. And the crowd was into it. It was actually really good. This match was okay. It was not bad, but it was not as good as their Raw match from a couple of weeks ago. Mark Henry eventually came out. I figure Henry would turn on Big Show. They kind of teased it. They had to know that when people saw Mark Henry come out, everyone's like, all right, he's turning on Big Show. But he didn't. He did not turn on Big Show. I'm positive he will, possibly as early as Raw tonight. But they didn't do it here. He came out to cheer on his friend. He tried to get up on the apron at one point. Rusev kicked him off, and Henry was out on the floor. Rusev put Big Show in the accolade, and, the announcers claimed that Big Show tapped, but I didn't see it. It looked like he passed out, and the referee called for the bell, so a clean win for Rusev on his march, most likely, to John Cena. AJ Lee and Paige, Divas Championship. Divas Stopwatch had this at 6 minutes 50 seconds, so a combined 13 minutes plus for the two women's matches on this show, which is very impressive. AJ retained with the Black Widow, getting Paige to tap out. They were put in the death spot before the main event, and so accordingly it got the reaction that every match in the death spot normally gets, which is not much of a reaction at all. The match itself was fine. After it was over, Paige slapped Alicia Fox, her BFF, slapped her in the face, told her that she hates her. So I guess their 2-week friendship appears to be over. Main event, the real main event, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose inside Hell in a Cell. I said earlier, when Cole made that comment about the cell being malignant after the breast cancer promo, that it would not be the last dumb thing the announcers would say. This was the topper of all toppers here. And again, I understand that they're probably told, hey, listen, play dumb, this is what we want you to say. It's still stupid. The announcers pretended that they had never seen a Hell in a Cell match start with somebody on top of the cage. I think Cole asked JBL, hey, have you ever seen a match start out, a Hell in a Cell match start out like this before? And there was like a little hesitation, and then JBL was like, no, I never have. And you just roll your eyes. And, wrestling is what it is. It's entertainment, right? It's scripted, and the outcomes are predetermined. We all get that. But I do think that a lot of people, myself included, when we watch it, we want to get lost in it. There's the suspension of disbelief, and we want to kind of buy into it almost as sport, in that we want to believe that things we've seen before, classic matches and stats from the past. I mean, look, they spit out a video full of statistics before the Hell in a Cell, which I thought was great, telling us how many cell matches there have been, the longest one, how many people have, never again been inside the cell. They do that every year with the Royal Rumble. Those stat videos are some of the best video packages they put together. People like that. People like numbers. They like stats. They like to know that things that happened in the past still matter. And so when we hear the announcers blatantly disregard history and pretend that we're all fucking stupid, and in a week where Mick Foley, the man who ascended to the top of the cage at the beginning of his Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker, he was on Raw this week talking about the impact of being inside Hell in a Cell on his career. Pre-cell, post-cell, right? That's how he divides the two parts of his career. Foley was actually on television this week, so the fact that they would make a stupid comment like that, it just makes you shake your head, and I think that really is a part of why people just don't care anymore. It's not the only reason, it's a small part of it, but WWE does a very poor job of making people, or giving people a reason to care about stuff that's happened before, because WWE craps all over it constantly. They pretend things didn't happen, they pretend people didn't exist, all these different things, and the stupid bullshit they peddle on commentary. It makes you shake your head when you hear something like that. So that was pretty fucking dumb. But yeah, Dean Ambrose came out, and the first thing he did after going inside the cell is come right back out, and he climbed up to the top. People were going crazy because that's exactly the kind of thing they wanted to see. And so Seth Rollins came out, and he teased going up, but then he said, you know what? Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury were out there, the new Stooges. He said, you guys go up there, and you bring him down. So up went the Stooges, and Ambrose was up there with a kendo stick defending himself. Rollins came up from behind, so now we have, it's 3-on-1 on top of the cage. At one point, Rollins told the Stooges to toss Ambrose off the cage, which obviously did not happen. So this all built to Rollins started climbing down on the side by the announcers, and at that point I could tell exactly where this was going. Plus, both announce tables, the Spanish one and the American one, had been completely cleared off. So we knew something was about to happen. And they have that beam like halfway down. It's the same thing when Shawn Michaels had the match with The Undertaker in 97 and he's climbing down. His feet were on a beam halfway down and then he let go and he fell through the table. Same thing happened here, only this time Ambrose delivered a headbutt to Rollins. Rollins went flying off through the Spanish announce table. Ambrose went flying up through the American announce table. And so both guys were laid out in a heap, people going crazy. There was a long period here where people were working on them. They had to bring stretchers down to the ring. This may have gone on a little too long, but they stretchered both guys out. Ambrose, of course, did not want to be stretchered out, so he got off. He found Rollins in the aisleway, brought him back down to the cage, threw him inside, and when the bell rang, it was great because there was a huge pop. I can't tell you the last time I remember a match in WWE where there was a huge reaction just for the opening bell. So that's how into this match and into this feud people were, even though the feud has probably cooled down a little bit over the last few weeks. But this is what the Hell in a Cell was made for. I said earlier, Orton and Cena had no business being inside that cage. That was a regular, hardcore, no DQ kind of match. They had no reason to be inside the cage. These guys had a reason to be inside the cage. This is a blood feud. These two brothers, right? One turned on the other. They've been feuding for months. They had a big match at SummerSlam that went unresolved because Rollins hit him in the head with a briefcase and got the pin. It's been building to this for months. This is how you climax a feud inside Hell in a Cell. So I think people feel the same way because they reacted that way. They heard the bell, they went nuts, and they knew that, Rollins was about to get the hell beaten out of him. So they went on to have what I thought was actually a really good match. I thought they were just beating the crap out of each other in there. There was one spot where there was a table. I think Rollins had set it up that was kind of bridged from the apron to the cage. And Ambrose delivered an elbow drop off the top rope down onto Rollins through the table. Cut up Rollins' back a little bit on that one. Kane interfered with a fire extinguisher because it wouldn't be a good match unless it had interference from Kane. And the irony is not lost on me of Kane using a fire extinguisher. Rollins nailed a curb stomp. Ambrose kicked out. First person, I think, who's ever kicked out of the curb stomp that I can remember. Ambrose ended up hitting Rollins in the head with the Money in the Bank briefcase that had been introduced into the match, which was a play off the finish of their last match at SummerSlam, as I mentioned before, when Rollins used the briefcase on Ambrose for the finish, so I like that. Ambrose grabbed 2 cinder blocks from outside the ring, underneath the ring, and threatened to end Rollins with a curb stomp of his own through the cinder blocks, when all of a sudden, out went the lights. And the lights were out for a long, long time. We heard this chant of some kind over and over and over again, to the point where it went on for so long, I looked at my friend and I thought for a second that maybe the feed had frozen because we kept hearing the same thing over and over and over again. And we had some feed problems earlier in the show. But no, they just played it over about 10 or 15 times. And then all of a sudden we see a lantern in the middle of the ring. The lights are still out. We see all of the camera flashes, like what Bray Wyatt calls his fireflies, all around the arena. Ambrose is in the corner. He's looking at the lantern. He has no idea what's going on. All of a sudden there's smoke billowing from a hole in the ring. And there's a hologram that I presume showed Sister Abigail. At least that's, I think, what they were trying to portray. So we see this hologram in the middle of the ring, and then Bray Wyatt comes from out of nowhere. He attacks Dean Ambrose, and people didn't know how to react to this. I think it was a combination of people in the building probably couldn't see at first what was going on. They didn't know what the hell was going on. And then it was a combination of people kind of being into it because we haven't seen Bray in a while, and also a lot of people who just were very upset. Here we have this great match going on, and we have this. So I can understand why people would be upset by that or be frustrated, but Bray laid him out with a rock bottom, Uranage, and Seth Rollins got the pin. So he wins the Hell in a Cell match against Dean Ambrose. 2 straight pay-per-view wins in their respective matches. Rollins now 2-0 over Ambrose. Not a big fan of that. I think Ambrose really needed this win. Especially, he took the losing fall on Raw Monday night in that 3-on-2 handicap match. It was Orton laid him out with an RKO and pinned him. I assumed that meant Orton was probably losing and Cena would win because Orton got the pin on Monday night. And Ambrose took the fall because he was going to win at Hell in a Cell, and that did not happen. Seth Rollins got the win. This was very much reminiscent of the finish to the Shawn Michaels-Undertaker match in 1997. And I point that out because there's a lot of people very pissed off. They said, this match sucked because of the finish, or this show sucked, or WWE now is burying Dean Ambrose. And it makes me laugh because nobody criticizes WWE for their stupid shit more than me. But at the same time, you got to be fair about this. You cannot complain that WWE is not doing anything with Bray Wyatt, which they haven't been. Okay, they fucked up the whole Wyatt family. They could have done so much more with those guys. Now it looks like they're split up. They were off TV for a couple of months. It was ridiculous. And I love how all the people said, well, coming out of the John Cena feud, Bray Wyatt is better off for. I forgot who I heard who made that comment. And it's like, are you on fucking drugs, dude? What did Bray Wyatt gain from feuding with John Cena? Being able to look back on it now all these months later. Okay, were there any really great matches that came out of that feud? I guess the match at Payback, that final match they had, was pretty good. The cage match sucked. The WrestleMania match was, it was okay. It wasn't anything special. But it's not like Bray came out of that feud elevated in the eyes of the fans. They did nothing with him when that feud was over. Then he feuded with Jericho, and they had some good matches. And Jericho ended up with a pay-per-view match at Night of Champions against Orton, and Bray Wyatt was nowhere to be found. So I don't know what they've been doing with the Wyatt family. It looks like they're trying to get something going again now with Bray, and I hope it works, and I hope they stick to it, and they don't, screw this up. But at the same time, you cannot complain that they're not doing anything with Bray Wyatt, or he's being buried. And then when he interferes in your pay-per-view main event, in the big closing angle to the show, to set up a new feud with the number 2 babyface in the company behind John Cena, you can't then say, oh, it sucked. Oh, they buried Ambrose. Oh, WWE sucks. I'm never watching again. I mean, what is it? Which is it? What do you want? You wanted Bray Wyatt back? You got him back. And not only did you get him back, you got him back at a pretty high-profile position. And I find myself excited about the prospects of an Ambrose Wyatt feud. It's funny, Wyatt did a radio interview about a month ago, I think it was. It was actually really good. And I don't know if he raised the issue or somebody else asked him about it, but he specifically singled out Dean Ambrose as somebody that he wanted to work with. They may have asked him, like, is there one guy on the roster right now who you think you can go out there and have some really classic kick-ass matches with? And he specifically said Dean Ambrose. And this was probably more than a month. This was months ago. And I thought about that, and I said to myself, you know what? He's probably right, because these two guys are out of their frickin' minds. They're crazy guys. You put those two guys like in a no DQ match, they'd probably have a hell of a brawl. So the prospects of a Bray Wyatt-Dean Ambrose feud, I personally am excited about that. I think it's going to be pretty cool, depending on how they handle it, of course. So I'm looking forward to that. As far as the finish to the match, I wish it would have been a clean finish. I wish that would have been the satisfying way to go off the air, or at least let him get the win and then have the lights go out. You didn't have to do it where Bray cost him the win. He could have gotten the big win over Rollins. Maybe don't do the cinder block thing, because then you'd have to take Rollins off TV for about a month like you did with Ambrose. But, they could have gone a different way with it, and there would have been a much more satisfying conclusion. Or, they could have done the stuff with Bray on Raw tonight. But they didn't do that. So, yes, I was disappointed that we didn't get that clean finish. But it didn't ruin the show for me. It didn't even ruin the match for me. I liked the match a lot. I thought it was a really good match. And I'm happy to see Bray Wyatt back on TV doing something meaningful again. After months of doing nothing with this guy and wasting him away. Any momentum he may have had from that feud with Cena, of which I don't think there was any, or the feud with Jericho, they squandered it by taking the guy off television for like a month or two. So it's almost like he's back to square one, and now they're starting fresh with the guy. And it doesn't make any sense to me, but now that he's back, hopefully they'll do right by him. That's my hope. I know I'm asking for a lot by asking WWE to do right by these guys, but I hope they do. And Ambrose is not dead. Again, I wish he would have gotten the win, but he didn't. It's fine. People look back on that Shawn Michaels Undertaker match in 1997 as this great all-time classic match, and guess what? It was. In my opinion, still to this day, the best Hell in a Cell match they've ever done. I take Foley and Undertaker, which I actually just went back and watched that match. I watched it right before the pay-per-view, as a matter of fact. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. That I put in a different category. I don't even know how to rate that match. It was so unique and awesome in its own way. But just as a pure Hell in a Cell match, I still say Michaels Undertaker from 97, the very first one they ever did. That match had everything. It had action. It had blood. It was a hot feud between the two of them at the time. Michaels was as drugged up and messed up as he may have been, was in a lot of ways in his prime when it came to those matches he was having in 97. And then they had the big finish with Kane. So even in that match, after the war that those two guys had, you had somebody come down to the cage, rip off the door, interfere, give Undertaker a sloppy-looking tombstone, and then Michaels crawled over and got the pin. And maybe there are people who think that that's a shit finish even to this day. But it doesn't diminish the quality of the match. That match is still looked back on as a classic. So in the same way, I don't think the finish of this match ruined the entire match. It may have left you with a bad taste in your mouth, but let's see how it plays out on Raw tonight. It's the same kind of finish we got in 97, and it didn't ruin that match, just like it didn't ruin this match. Because back then, you saw stuff like that all the time. People interfering in other matches. That was commonplace back during the Attitude Era. Okay, I still consider 97 to be part of the Attitude Era. That in a lot of ways, I think, was the genesis of it. Especially Bret Hart flipping out after his cage match earlier in the year and cursing on TV. To me, I trace the Attitude Era back to that time period. And it's funny to me in a lot of ways because we have a lot of people still who clamor for the Attitude Era, right? And they're so nostalgic to go back to the way that things were. There's a lot of things, as far as how things used to be, whether it was Attitude or pre-Attitude or 30 years ago. There's a lot from wrestling in the past, I think, that WWE could borrow. Okay, it's not everything is old-fashioned and you got to move forward and that's old hat. Like, there's a lot of stuff I wish that they would pick from those eras and things they used to do that are so basic that would help the product now, and they don't. But I love how people look back on that Attitude period and they wax nostalgic about it and they romanticize it and how they wish they could go back, not understanding and not realizing that we saw stuff like this all the time. And I guarantee you that if you took most of the stuff that happened back then and you had that happen now, okay, with the current audience and social media and the internet being what it is and everything else, 90% or more of the shit that happened during that time period, people would be online as soon as it happened. As soon as, Mae Young popped that hand out of her vag, okay, people would be on social media, I'm never watching again, this is disgusting, this is horrendous. And maybe that's a bad example because that was a pretty fucking terrible segment, but my point is, people would be complaining about all of that stuff that they look back on now and they wish they could go back to. I mean, I fall victim of the same thing sometimes. So I think we just need to keep some perspective on these things. And like I said before, let's see what happens on Raw tonight. Let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks, because Raw of late has been just a horrendous show to sit through. Maybe now with an Ambrose-Bray Wyatt feud, if it's done up the right way, maybe it'll breathe some life into what has been largely a lifeless show for the last month plus. And it also seems to pave the way for a Seth Rollins-Randy Orton feud, which they were already going in that direction, and it would seem... I'm trying to look going forward, and I assume we'll find out more about what direction they're going in tonight on Raw. Like, for example, John Cena. What do you do with John Cena now? If Brock is coming back for Survivor Series, then that's the obvious match you start building to, but everything I'm seeing indicates that Brock ain't coming back until the Royal Rumble. So Cena's the number one contender for a championship that he can't fight for another 2 months or 3 months. So what do you do with him in the meantime? I look at the roster right now, and I see a guy like Rusev. Rusev now has vanquished Mark Henry. He has vanquished The Big Show, among others. Where does he go from here? Obviously, it's building to an eventual Cena-Rusev feud. Would they do it now and not next year? Maybe. It would seem like both guys now have nothing to do. That doesn't bode very well for Rusev if he's going to wrestle the number one contender before he actually wrestles Brock, because we all know how that's going to end. I think we all know how that's going to end no matter what. But at least Orton has a direction with Rollins. Ambrose now has a direction with Wyatt. We're still waiting for Reigns at some point to come back. I guess that's the upper card picture right now, as it stands. It's pretty barren. There's not a whole lot to get me excited, which is why I am giving Ambrose and Wyatt a chance. There's really not much else on the show to look forward to. So that's your Hell in a Cell review for the 2014 edition. I'm hoping the final Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. It would be nice if they did away with it next year and did what they should have done this year. This should have been Halloween Havoc this week. Think about it. The timing would have been perfect this week. Follow me on Twitter, @Solomonster. That's my handle. I always live tweet during these pay-per-views, during Raw on Monday nights. So you can follow me on there. You can download full episodes of the podcast on thesolomonster.com. That's our official website. You can go back in the archives and listen to most of our shows. They're not all up there, but we've done over 350 episodes, so there's plenty of content up there. You can also find more bonus content like what you're listening to right now, right here on the YouTube channel. And click that subscribe link if you haven't already done so. So that way when new videos go up, you will be alerted. And there's more content coming on this channel very soon. So please do subscribe. And check out our store on ProWrestlingTees.com, ProWrestlingTees.com/Solomonster Sounds Off. We've got a whole bunch of t-shirt designs up there right now, and they ship all over the world. You can pay via PayPal, credit card, debit card, lots of different ways. So you can show your support for the Sound Off by sporting a shirt. So check it out. So that's going to do it for this episode of Sound Off Extra. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to listen, and we will be back very soon with a brand new Extra. Until next time, be well, stay safe, and please be sure to check out full episodes of the podcast on thesolomonster.com. Take care, guys.